Dylan Thomas famously wrote that although lovers be lost, love shall not. And this album positively aches with a sense of longing and absence. But is it any good? Let's find out, shall we? This album, To the Far Away by Dave Bainbridge, has been described as sonic perfection, and the listener's heart soars to the wash of the ocean and the trills of summer birds, all instilling in them a deep felt desire just to be elsewhere. As we lose ourselves amid these spiralling melodies, it's a cinematic piece, a masterpiece of Celtic prog, and one that explores a topography of longing and separation. There is a mystery mythos that unfolds amid the flurry of pipes and Mike Oldfield-esque guitar, a bit like Enya takes a trip to Hergest Ridge. But it is a thrilling blend of instrumental and vocal tracks that certainly takes us places. In fact, Bert Sarako said, To the Far Away is a wonderful journey of the mind, full of captivating music throughout. If I'd heard this a little while ago, this would have definitely made my top 10 list of prog albums for 2021. I say go and buy this album and pour yourself a large one as you take this trip across oceans to rejoin these two star-crossed lovers. The music feels very familiar, lots of sonic illusions going on here, with the guitar referencing the likes of Steve Hackett and David Gilmour and Mike Oldfield, of course. It's like it creates this warm glow of progness, like a bowl of ready bread on a chilly day. A day that would be especially bracing if one is stood on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. I love the folky and Celtic textures that are explored in this album. It's an album also that seems to very much connect with the natural world. Whether it's the splashing of the sea or chirping birds or summer meadows, there's certainly it's all imbued with lots of fiddly-diddly pipes and trill amid the atmospheric swells of this symphonic prog. In fact, the prog archives have commented upon the very eclectic tones explored on this album. To the Far Away encapsulates his Celtic progressive rock, folk and classical musical influences in a wonderfully vibrant, diverse and yet coherent release, making it one of the best progressive albums of the year, a sentiment I fully concur with. To the Far Away perhaps could be described as a concept album, one that explores the ache of two separated lovers, separated of course on either side of the Atlantic Ocean by the global pandemic. But fear not, our lovers are reunited after this oceanic expanse is traversed. They should do a Marillion ocean cloud and just get the rowboats out. As I've said, this music draws heavily upon, Celtic progressive rock and classical influences, with layered guitars and strings, and of course the ethereal and beautiful vocals of Sally Minnear, I beg your pardon, not to mention the poetry of Lynn Caldwell. These all help to bring this oceanic trek of prog proportions to life. Others that play on this record, of course, you get Sally Minnear, as I've mentioned, has a fine set of pipes, Lord of the Dance, Celestial Fire, Ian Hornell, Jeff Lynne's ELO 10cc, vocals Troy Donockley. I hope I've said that right. I do apologise if I've got it wrong. There's some wonderful bass work by John Paul and some beautiful poetry read by Lynn Caldwell. And this poetry certainly adds something to the music. In fact, Dave Bainbridge said, I'd read some of Lynn's work and immediately felt that she would be the person to help me organise and bring an emotional focus to my thematic and lyrical ideas for this project. Dave Bainbridge, of course, laments the fact that the lockdown has resulted in the shutdown of so many venues and the shutdown of live music. It did give musicians a lot of time that rather than, as I like to say, rather than sitting around on their over-sanitised hands, got to producing some fine music. But for Dave Bainbridge, it was the forced separation from his fiancée and provides the pulse and ache of this music. Apparently they were due to be married on Cruise to the Edge with Neil Morse officiating and John Young as best man. But unfortunately everything had to be shut down and locked away and sanitised to death. So not only does this album contribute to that rather strange genre we know as the lockdown album, it also explains the emotional centre of the music. But it was also an album that was informed in part by the Lincolnshire landscape rather than the sausages, which informs, I think, the atmosphere and textures it explored on some of the tracks. It's a heady amalgam of pastoral prog as well as some symphonic influences. Dave Bainbridge plays all manner of instruments on that, helping to create a tapestry that perfectly evokes feelings of loss and separation. as he loses himself amid the landscape. So let's talk about some of the tracks on this album. It starts off with Stargazer, with an atmospheric swell and sounds of the sea. I really enjoyed this one. You get the haunting voices of Mike Oldfield-esque guitars, before the noodly bits give it a distinctly Celtic edge. Beautiful voice, beautiful ethereal voice on this. The lyric, I feel the call to far and distant shores. A gorgeous ebb and flow of this music feeding into that feeling of immensity and distance. As I ebbed with the ocean of life, wrote Walt Whitman. And this song thematically creates this feeling of remoteness. Ghostlight is an interesting number on this one. It's a lengthy piece that is built around this motif of a solitary light being left on in a theatre. And the symbolism is quite rich here. The light in the darkness suggests hope. It even has quasi-religious significance. Girl in the Magical Sky starts off with all these trills and twitterings of birds, perfectly evoking summer, along with the poetry, of course, held between the shadow and now. I mean, the dynamic range of this is it eddies between, somber piano and explosive guitar. It's just, it just keeps you captivated as you listen. Beautiful sounds, ebbing and flowing, chanted vocals, all adding poignancy, I think, to the lyrical content. Rain and Sun is a beautiful instrumental, starts off acoustically before the electric guitar takes over the baton. Of course, strings, piano and pipes create almost Omadorn-like chorus of sound. Cathedral Thinkers ends with some beautiful piano playing and keyboards with some electric guitar. And As Night Falls is a short and atmospheric instrumental, which, as one critic has already pointed out, resonating guitar sailing over a sea of lush sounds, which very much describes this whole album in many respects. Something Astonishing begins with the chiming Steve Hackett-like acoustic guitar that develops into a vibrant and rich guitar solo over platform by some wonderful keyboards, as well as some choir-like accompaniment before Sally's soft vocals take us full circle to the start. It has this round to it, the sound, this feel. It's an optimistic and satisfying way to end what is ultimately a very pleasurable listening experience. To the Far Away takes us into the very heart of longing and loss and the need to be connected. Not only because of the musical textures and exploration, but also the magnitude of the ocean, which becomes a motif on this record. Progressive rock grandeur and Celtic rock influences, all with a beating heart. So Dave Bainbridge, To the Far Away. Go out and buy this album. I will put the link below this video. I know you've been watching an episode of New Album Review. Please be sure to click like, subscribe and check that bell. And whilst you're down there, check some of the other links for ways you can support the sterling work done at Classic Album Review. If you're still here, if you haven't switched off already, I thank you wholeheartedly for doing that. And ask you to maybe check some of these videos that should be appearing up here anytime soon. Other than that, I will leave you by saying I hope you're all well and healthy and COVID-free. But more importantly, of course, that you keep listening.